So we have Jure here, and he's going to tell us about Google Sheet stuff with Python, automating it. And I'm excited about this one too, because I do use Google Sheets a lot, and I hope you'll all enjoy it. Stay for the end. After this, we're going to have breakout rooms. So don't leave if you would like some chit chat after. Jure, take it away.
Thanks. So let's do the screen sharing thing. Very good. Okay. Remove this. Perfect. Right. So the whole idea I want to present to you in short today is how do we, make life of our business users a bit easier. And the problem I'm addressing here is that users love to use Excel. Like, no matter what I tell them, no matter what kind of interface I give them, they're like, give me Excel files. And then they're really happy to send me the Excel file back, modified like 20 times. So, being an IT person, obviously then the solution is introduce a multiplayer Excel called Google Sheets. And once we have Google Sheets and it's on the internet, the next logical step, of course, is to write scripts for that, to make my life a bit easier. So here's where a GSpread library comes in. So I made, for example, to kind of work a simple example here, I made a Google form that writes responses into a Google spreadsheet, or a Google Sheet, I think, as it's called now. And it's like a simple, like, who wants to kind of have a potluck and, asking for some data. Now imagine that you want to kind of collect the emails automatically out of this, and then maybe, add it to a MailChimp or another type of mailing list. So the way you would do this is in Python, you import GSpread, then you connect a Google service account, which is about 5 minutes of clicking around really complex Google developer console. But once you have it, you get like a JSON file that you put it next to your Python, and that takes care of all the secrets in the API communications with Google Sheet. And you also need to share, you will get like a secret, like an email address that you can then share your spreadsheet with that address. And that allows you then in the next step, in the next line, to basically says, just, Google open this thing and use the .sheet one, like use the first sheet. And that's just the name here. And then this allows in the next step to basically ask all the values in column number 6. And that's like a fun gotcha here because it's one index. Excel has like columns 1 index instead of 0 indexed. And once you print this data, you basically get the data back. Another interesting gotcha that you kind of find here is that you also get like a header, which is something you might want or might not want, but it's definitely there. Another way to kind of get the data is to just call like get values, and you will get like a list of lists that you can then manipulate further, which is okay if you want to do like raw access on this data, but of course we can do better. So how do we do better? We do better by using Pandas, and Pandas allows us here to we once again connect the service account, and then we can just use get as data frame, and that will load our data into Pandas data frame basically. And here already we can see that that makes it much easier for us to work in Python because now it's 0 indexed, and it will also take care of some data and data conversion for us. And yay, we can work with Pandas. Life is much easier now. We can also do it in the other direction. So GSpread Pandas will, I'm getting stuff here. So GSpread Pandas will allow us, on the other hand, to basically just, take our data frame and says, hey, take this data frame, write it to the Google Sheet, and it will do that. And we'll get like a nice Python instances back and so on. So Once again, imagine doing some, Python data analysis, and of course you use Pandas, and you want to share this with, your business analyst team. You can just kind of drop it into Google Sheets and share it with them instead of having to, email Excel files around and so on. So that's like, kind of basic way to think about GSpread, and use it in your work. What I want to show you next is like how can you then take this one step further and create like really nice user interfaces for end users. And one way to do this is to actually use a feature of Google Sheets, which is called data validation. And that allows you to kind of define rules how the dropdowns work in Google Sheets. So there's two ways to do this. One is you can have like a list, and another one is a way to kind of reference another sheet. And normally, if you're working in Google Sheets, there's like a nice pop-up that's on top here, and you would manually define this. But because we're of course working with Python, there's a Python library called GSpread formatting, which does a lot more. But one of the features that it has, it allows you to set up a data validation rule, and you can have like this boolean condition that you can then of course define on a cell range. Another way to do this is to kind of have a list from a range so that you can reference another sheet inside the same worksheet. And once again, you basically just do the same thing but in Python. And the workflow here is like you would maybe write different rules from Python in different sheets, and then when you have your master sheet where users are working, you would then define these data validation rules in a way that would kind of give you dynamic options. Real world example where I did this is I have a client where we have like a lot of different, kind of foreign keys in Django terminology, where it's like everything is a type of something, institution, repository, and so on. And there's like there's an API to that, and there's like a customer facing portal. But one thing we keep hearing back from our potential users that wanted to give us data is, hey, can we get this in Excel format? So one thing that we built is I basically wrote a script that scraped the API and wrote it into Google Sheet, and then created all these kind of all these children subsheets, and then kind of created this data validation model when there's now a drop down with correct, kind of the choices that we like. And a cool feature that happened at the same time is that then the Google Sheets will do like a data validation, and you can get like this red arrow. So that allows then, our content team to flag to kind of flag the problems to say, why is this data cell here calling a value that's not on our list of approved values and so on. And, we can have these conversations. But what's the best thing in my mind is like, there's almost no training required on the tool itself. It's not like a crazy React thing that's almost Excel, but not really, because like it is something that users are comfortable with, and the conversation we have are around how the data is structured and what do they do with the data itself, and not about how to use the tool. So I can really recommend this as a way to make like a really high fidelity user interfaces. And I want to also kind of leave you with possible next steps, ideas if you want to do this kind of work. Is Google Drive API gives you ability to get like a callback once a Google Sheet is changed. So that could allow you to basically, once the user changes the data, make a callback back onto the like your Django API. And that you could then do like a reading of the data and updating any other business logic. That's one way to do it. And then the other two options are like Google Sheets allows you to create embedded both charts and pivot tables. So you could basically push the data with GSpread, and then have, your business analysis person kind of generate charts and pivot tables on their own, make them exportable, and then you could potentially embed those iframes, into your organization or something like that. So it, once again, it allows you to have a quick prototyping around different views. And then, of course, at some point, you would probably code this back into another tool, but for a first prototype, that should be enough. So that actually brings us to Q&A. On top, there are libraries used. They're easy, Googleable on PyPI. I also wrote a blog post about it on my blog. There are slides there. And if you're not familiar, I'm starting to do interesting interviews with interesting people in the world of IT, so maybe check that out. I wrote some similar blog posts around this also in the past, and there are food pictures of bread and bake, so maybe that's your thing. And that's it from my side. What are the questions?
Can I start? So you're using Google Spreadsheet as a database, basically. And in your experience, what is the limit on how many entries does it make sense to use before it starts lagging and becoming useless?
It's really performant. Like you can get, I think I went up to several tens of thousands. So that was okay. The limits that you hit is on the API rate limiting.
Okay.
So if you do too many updates that are too small, the API will start rate limiting you. So you might want to think about you're not updating a cell, you're pushing a whole row or a whole column or so on. And the interfaces will allow you to do this. You just can't do a for loop on a cell by cell update.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I have a question about you said at the beginning you have to set an email or something per sheet. What was that?
Yeah, so so basically Google will give you an API key that connects you to the Google Sheets. And what you need to do is you need to kind of create a developer account for that specific permission access. And GSpread documents this really well. But basically think about setting up an API key and authorizing that specific Google Sheet to have access to that specific API key.
Is this free? Can I do this with Google how many stuff I want? Or
Yeah, it's, I'm sure at some point they will throttle you and try to charge you, but it's I think hundreds of thousands of requests.
So if I have, I have at work lots of sheets that are shared on a Google Drive, and different, and all the colleagues, we can see it. So how does this fit in? So I have to log in when I want to see them on the drive. So for this thing, I get some key, API key, and then the program can do stuff with it. That's the idea?
Yep. Let me just open this and I will show you how this works. And while I look this, maybe somebody has another question.
Yeah, I have a question. What would be the next, a bit more complex way of doing this? Maybe just using Django, or is there a package for Django that does something like this?
You just write it to your to Pandas, and then Pandas does everything for you.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is, more general, how do I take my Django data and write it to Pandas, for example?
What
Okay,
about
so let me just share
yes.
this quickly. So here I have a Google Cloud Platform, and I have a Google Sheets API enabled and Drive API. And that gives you kind of the usual, Google Cloud thing. And you can see like I was writing the talk and making the requests. And then here I have a Google Sheet, and I share this document with kind of this special service account that I set up here. And that's how it kind of has access to either, in this case, to edit. And you could also share a whole Google Drive folder with that specific address. And that's something that like Google, as you go through the process, Google will give you like, this is your special URL. And it will also give you like a JSON with, secret tokens and stuff.
Oh, nice, thanks. Is there some kind of notion of versioning? Like if like I do something bad from the Python, like what, yeah.
Okay, so Google Sheets has internal versioning. So if you just use their versioning, you will see also the changes that you made with the code. There's an API limitation that I could not figure out how to get around, because I don't think you can, is you cannot access previous versions with the API. Version 3 of Google Sheets API could do it, but version 4 cannot. They're like Stack Overflow has some really weird workarounds and ideas, but it's basically, it's not easy, and I could not find like an official way to do it. Which is something you don't really need often, but the reason why I was looking into is because I was trying to figure out if I can do diffing between two versions to see what the user changed. And the answer is not easily, and it's a non-trivial problem. So it's probably going to be like a whole new talk once I figure it out.
And callbacks couldn't be used for that?
They could be. The problem with callbacks and stuff is how do you buffer them? You still need to, like, preferably I would do like a daily snapshot. And so on. So it's a whole lot of manual management that I wanted to avoid, but maybe it cannot be avoided. Kevin, the comment on your comment is, it turns out like even if you want to do diffing between two Excel files, there are almost no good like solutions on the internet. There's like people do really weird stuff with Excel. And probably there's like add-ons you can buy, but there's not like a good solution. I also looked into data diffing of two Pandas data frames, and Pandas also doesn't want to be diffed. So it's like this really weird situation where it's not easy to do this.
You can unzip the XLSX file and then try to.
That's actually like, as funny as it sounds, that's probably actually the best way to do it would be to render your whole spreadsheet into like a Markdown table and then do like a text diff, because that will allow you to just like generate a really pretty difference. That's the theory. The next problem is what happens when users start to rearrange rows or move columns around. So it's like you might actually need to have like a 3-level XML diffing of the data. So non-trivial problems.
Did you ever have problems trying to persuade the customers to go to Google Spreadsheets? This is more not so technical questions, but some people are really afraid of going to the cloud with their data, so they really want to use Excel. And if you needed to use Excel, is there like, if I remember correctly, on OneDrive, many people could access the same file simultaneously or not? How was that? If you have any experience with that?
my customers, like when I tell them about Google Sheets, they go like, yes, please, and we go from there. So that's not a thing. We're also like distributed. So for us, like network drives are in Google Drive. Okay, we're good.
I have one more question. How do you test this?
You don't.
It just works. I did not need, like, it was not, I see it more like a utility script that you run once in a while. I guess, I mean, the libraries have tests. You can mock this stuff if you want to. The way I would actually test this is I would test the Pandas data frame part, and then just assume that the network code works. But somebody can like disagree with me and tell me how to do this better.
In a talk next time. All right, thank you very much, Jure. Everyone join me in thanking you for the talk.
Oh,
Somehow.
we have another question before. Also, how do I do the clap? That's my question.
You have reactions bottom right.
Can you write a plugin for Zoom?
I have a question. You can, it's not easy. I looked
can't
into
use
it.
Okay, so Mateusz is asking.
Can you explain this a bit more, Mateusz?
Right, Mateusz is writing in the chat. So there's a Pandas, there's a data entry job inputting 3 columns in G Sheets, Google Sheets.
Yeah. So the question is, can you do automated Google Sheets imports from Pandas framework? And yes, the answer is that GSpread Pandas does this from you. Like you would just run the, you would either create a Pandas data frame and just write it and have that script in like a cron job, or you could do it the other way around, right? And read this. Just Google Sheets into a data frame with a cron job. You just have to write a few lines of code. Okay. So thank you for now.